So, I was asked to discuss human relations theory this week, which is one that I didn't really know anything about. I didn't recall it from Hibsey, so was new to me. But it goes back to the late 1920s and a guy by the name of Elton Mayo, who was really kind of the father of this human relations movement in a lot of aspects. What human relations theory says, and I think in a lot of ways now is quite common sense, but that people do a better job working and being engaged in kind of work productivity and work life balance when they feel like their goals are taken into consideration, when what's important to them and that they value in careers are taken into consideration, when they see a bigger purpose in the types of work that they do, and kind of trying to get out of this idea of people go to work, they do a basic job, and they go home at the end of the day when it's time to clock out. What human relations theory tried to say is you're not going to get the best work out of those kinds of people. You're not going to have people feel like they're contributing anything and do as strong of a job unless they're engaged in their work. So when we look at what's important to them and we talk about how they're driven and how they see that they're contributing to the bigger picture and they have a motivation and they have goals that they're trying to meet and kind of personal values are taking into consideration, they tend to produce a better overall quality and they tend to be happier, which leads to decreased burnout and kind of helps keep people in their positions a little bit longer. Thinking about this from a social work client perspective, I really haven't ever had a client that I've worked with who has been feeling that way. However, I believe it's also important as we think about our code of ethics that we maintain quality in our co-workers as well and provide services to them. So I think that's the example I'm choosing to use for this. As most of you know, I work in a hospital setting. I currently work on our palliative care team, so we work a lot with people who have chronic illness and either are at end of life or end of life is fairly certain it'll be within 6 to 8 months, most cases. Um, we have a new nurse practitioner who has been hired and is very, very good. He cares for people, he does a great job working with families, and really, truly is invested in what he does. But unfortunately, he's in a position where the last few weeks he's really been being micromanaged versus having any kind of autonomy. And he's really feeling that he's not being valued. Um, it's not uncommon that he will go see a patient and our physician will go in 2 minutes later and completely undo everything that the nurse practitioner has worked to build for rapport or kind of had a relationship with the family. And this is causing some problems, as you can imagine, both for the family but also for the nurse practitioner. Because then when he goes back the next day to follow up, he's hearing, well, we talked with the doctor yesterday, you meant X, Y, and Z. So on Friday, he has unfortunately got really connected with one of our patients in a way that he's having to step back because he can no longer treat that person in an ethically responsible way because he's just too attached. And he was really starting to feel this overwhelming, like, I failed, I can't do this. And it was just him and I in the office at the time. So we had a nice long conversation about, you've gotten, this connection with this patient, and at the end of the day, that's a really great thing. This is someone who has very limited social support, have had relatively no visitors in the hospital since they've been here. You have essentially kind of assumed that role for them, And while you might be acting now outside the scope of your medical position, it is still someone that you can see in a different, way. Um, but also talking about the fact that you feel this great sadness is just showing that all people matter to you, and trying to help him kind of think through what is important to you. And if what is important to you is that you can step back and let the physician take over this case so that you have an opportunity to, kind of take care of your own self and not get burnout and not feel that this carries over to the next patient, that's okay. Um, so we did spend a lot of time kind of talking about a lot of these things. What are your goals and what do you value? And if you really feel that the other 6 weeks of work you've put in have mattered, this one case is not, career changing by any means. So, again, I would encourage you, if you're like me and didn't know a lot about human relations theory, check it out. Like I said, I think in a lot of ways it's probably stuff we now think is common sense, but in 1920s, Industrial Revolution America, this was probably pretty profound. So, looking forward to watching everybody else's videos in just a couple more weeks till graduation.